Whether people want to admit it or not, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are literally on the divorce path. It's not going to be easy for Harry for the simple fact that, when you think about it, if you remember a couple of weeks back now, Meghan Markle openly spoke on that podcast with the high-voiced woman, Jamie Kern-Lima, and basically said, well, to the world, that man loves me so much. This was a comment, of course, that the late Queen Elizabeth, very quickly picked up on the fact that Harry was willing to do anything for this woman. Her famous phrase, if you recall, was she felt that Harry was a little too in love. I mean, it's a nice phraseology of a lady of her age, but basically what she was meaning, I think, as we all know, is that he's nuts. And so bottom line is, what can you do to, well, put him on the right track? Sadly, she was unable to do this. And now really behind the scenes, what we're seeing, and this is so prevalent when you think about it, you just have to look at exactly how Meghan Markle has operated ever since she stepped in front of Harry and manipulated the situation. Now, I don't say the divorce sort of, trajectory easily, but basically, Harry has to do everything in order to make this relationship survive. Now, he might go on the stage of the New York Times and say, people are going to be disappointed, etc. I wouldn't wish that on anybody, I genuinely wouldn't. But you have to look at Meghan's track record of exactly how she's treated family, friends, and previous spouses and husbands to career climb a way, in her mind, to the top. Now, recall, if you do, earlier this year, when Meghan decided to launch her gear, if you like, in New York. And suddenly, again, Harry had to have sent a note to the hotel in advance that he'd made for the two children in order to reassure the very fragile ego of Meghan that the world loved her, but none more so than Harry and her children. And again, also, if you remember, she had to be told on camera just how much Harry felt of her and the children and all of this sort of stuff, and what a marvellous mother she was. He constantly has to prop up her ego. Now, as we've seen with Harry with the fallout of Centre Barley, his ego is equally just as fragile. They're both as nutty, some people might say, as each other. But one of them is far cleverer, and that's the problem. And today, on By Royal Appointment, I'm going to detail exactly how this is hurtling towards exactly what just I've said. Morning, nice to see you, chums. Thank you so much as ever for joining me today on a brand new episode of By Royal Appointment. This is for you. This is what I find, and this is what I like to share. We'll have a lovely wave. Are you keeping all right today? It's a windy day here in London town, but we don't care. At least the sun is shining. And as I've pointed out many times before, if you're a regular to the show, we just know, don't we, in a couple of months I'll be saying it's freezing here. I can't take the coat off, and you'll be telling me for having the same coat on. And yeah, well, this is life, isn't it? It's a warm coat though, you see. Yes, you just can't think of fashion in these moments. You have to think of, well, yes, comfort. It's important, isn't it? It's a little bit like this particular ongoing story. And I've often said this about this on the show, that absolutely Harry and Meghan are a soap opera of the highest order. That's what they are, that's what they do. Meghan has turned this whole thing into something that really suits herself. You see, what a lot of people don't realise is just what a clever manipulator she is. And I've often said, I'm not necessarily against that in the world that she came from. I've seen this with actresses many times before, even on pop videos where, they just want a few more minutes on camera or a few better shots, or they'll cry, or they'll go off with the producer to make sure that they get what they want. You get the picture. And the thing is, these girls are ruthless. When we, first clapped eyes on Meghan Markle, if you remember, even at that very first outing on the Invictus, where she's in the ripped jeans and the dark glasses and the white shirt, she was very much sort of playing this, I don't want the paparazzi, absolutely lapping it up like a cat with cream. She couldn't suddenly believe that all eyes were going to be on her. When she engineered that particular meeting and the way that she operated with Prince Harry, make no mistake, this was a woman who knew she'd caught the bull's eye, and she certainly wasn't going to let it go. You see, the previous, whatever you want to call it, marriage to Trevor had fallen apart simply because, whether you want to put it nicely or not, Trevor had become null and void, useless. He didn't get her what she wanted. She wasn't getting the parts, and he was not necessarily up there ready to get her the parts. Meghan only wanted the people that, she could do well with. She's not on her own. I mean, trust me, you look at the histories of all the greats like Marilyn Monroe, she, of course, moved in with Johnny Hyde, a very influential agent, went on to marry Joe DiMaggio, Arthur Miller, and set her sights on JFK. These, behind those nice baby blue eyes or whatever, are ruthless individuals who want fame at any cost, and Meghan truly was no different. But what was interesting was the way that Meghan played it was. Yes, I do believe she wasn't interested in the monarchy because it wasn't what she wanted. The fame attached was what she wanted, and she managed to, well, get that without too much of a problem. You could not have presented a more wimpy, pliable sort of dishcloth in front of her than Prince Harry. You see, people don't realise that Prince Harry is lacking in a lot of personal self-confidence. Yes, at the time he was the most eligible bachelor in the United Kingdom. And reasonably good looking, you know. People liked him because the palace had presented him as a fun, popular guy. You know, that was the idea. He could do all the things that William couldn't do. But of course, Meghan didn't realise just how far he was in the land of, well, shall we say, the lifestyle that she thought she was going to get. She thought moving into the world of royalty was going to be palaces, houses, private jets, all the freebies. She thought of it in the celebrity land. When Meghan Markle decided to lean into Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, she was very keen, in fact, to make sure that she could understand his younger brother. She'd already picked up on the fact that he was slightly vulnerable and, you know, after their few dates, had realised, and this is her words apparently, that, you know, Harry was a very special person that she felt she could nurture, need, and help move forward in his life. Now, many ex-paramours who dated Harry had said he was a lovely chap, but came with a lot of baggage. And really, when you think about it, that's why certain individuals like Chelsea Davy and Cressida Bonus had decided that that wasn't a life for them. It wasn't the royal life that they didn't particularly enjoy, according to a source. It was really more the fact that Harry was just very demanding, always had a problem, you know, always really didn't want to think it, you know, it could be anything to do with him. Of course, they weren't fame-hungry actresses who were desperate to be on the world stage. Chelsea Davy was nice with the media, but she didn't want it, she didn't need it, she didn't desire it, as of course was Cressida Bonus. This was really the excuse given to the media as to why Harry's relationships didn't work out. Harry believes, of course, that it was the media that ruined the opportunity with relationships with Chelsea Davy. But she's never really publicly come out and said, well, that's the reason. But friends who knew them at the time said she just found it claustrophobic. He was all-encompassing, 24/7, wanted a lot of attention, as you can imagine. Now, of course, Meghan seized on this opportunity. But according to a source, what she really wanted to do was try and get closer to William to work out exactly the problems that she may have with William moving forward. You get the picture. But you see, William was very, very aware of exactly how Meghan was operating, simply because his wife Catherine had already alerted him to the fact that Meghan asked an awful lot of questions in a very short time in their meeting, the girls' chat as it were. You see, Catherine found it very strange that Meghan wanted to talk non-stop about Princess Diana. I mean, let's not forget, she had a lot of information and would have had lots of discussions with her husband, of course, Prince William. But it wasn't something that she wanted to share with a complete stranger. And she wasn't the first person, according to the source. Even the Queen found it odd that Meghan brought Diana up very quickly. And as I pointed out, you know, clearly Meghan was looking for an insight, a bit of a drop that she could use perhaps to her advantage in order to make sure that she had a good conversation, a starting point with Harry. Remember, the story goes that she basically said after a yoga meeting, or whatever you want to call it, that she'd spoken to Diana. Now, this has never been confirmed, of course, and it's one of those stories that goes out in the perpetual myths of did it happen, didn't it? But one might suggest, of course, that Meghan herself knew exactly how to play this very troubled prince. You see, Prince Harry had moved away, in fact, a little bit more so from his family ever since his brother had got married. It's a natural thing that happened. And Harry was literally looking around for an anchor, somebody that he could call his own. Remember, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and William actually bought him a game called Grow Your Own Girlfriend because of his lack of success in securing a partner. Now, the story goes, and this is where this is interesting, you see, how could Harry not have been able to score a very nice girlfriend, just casual affair, whatever you want to call it, so he could go out and enjoy life? but he came with a big barrel, and that was the problem. You know, he just came with a lot with him. Of course, Meghan Markle had been alerted to this on their very first dates and knew exactly how to play it. Very sort of smothering, very engaging, all of that sort of stuff. Now, where do we feel, where is this going now in their relationship? The problem that you've got now is that literally, and this has happened so many times with Meghan's life before, she's an actress, she's playing a role, she played the role of the budding princess as she thought she was going to be, turned duchess, and she figured, well, this wasn't a role that she liked. She was bored rigid going around meeting people because ultimately she couldn't speak. She'd turn up at these events and was suddenly either meeting dignitaries in town halls and stuff like that. These weren't A-listers, these weren't George Clooney's, the Oprah Winfrey's. Where were they? That's what she wanted, right? Now, the bigger story, of course, goes also that very quickly she had all of these ideas, as you know, to sort of modernise the family. And she thought William would be the key factor alongside the late Queen. Of course, she believed that the Queen wasn't really instrumental in the way that the monarchy still worked, forgetting that this is a lady who was very astute even in her later years, and how grateful we were and are for that. But, you know, she wanted to push forward with these particular ideas. The other thing was, and this has been told to me from an excellent source, a former aide who worked alongside them right at the beginning, is that Harry could have alluded to the fact that he was more, shall we say, significant than he actually was in the monarchy. You see, she wouldn't know the hierarchy and the things and all that sort of stuff. But the other side of it was that according to the source, Harry had alluded the untold wealth, the riches, and that certainly, you know, got the cash registers going in Meghan Markle's eyes, right? She figured, well, this is going to be an easy life. She had no idea the fact that this is what you get when you're the second or third down, the spare, as Harry then famously called his book. And on top of all of that, Meghan could not understand that she didn't get the choice cuts of, say, the fashion designers. Everybody truly wanted to dress Catherine, tall, elegant, and more sedate in her outlook. You see, right from the off, Meghan Markle had got it wrong, with the slashed jeans, the white t-shirt, and the designer shades, pretending that she didn't like the media. I'm not saying you can't, you know, rectify that at a later point, but even down the line, Meghan was very choosy about the sort of designers that she wished to be dressed in, and she made it known. Behind the scenes, from the off, Harry had lost all control of his bride. He, of course, didn't know what to do. And the reason being is simply this, that she kept reminding him what she'd given up in order to take this life. Every time that she got teary or was frustrated or literally started to get a bit hysterical, she would point out that maybe this wasn't what she was looking for. And he had to work a lot harder in order to secure that particular relationship. Oh, yes, indeed. And the pattern then is now remained. You see, when Meghan sat down with Jamie Kern-Lima and she basically said, that man loves me so much, what she was actually saying was, listen, he will do anything for me and anything that I will say. And we've seen this over the last couple of days. He lost a charity simply because of his wife's behaviour. She wanted the limelight. Harry wanted the person to capitulate, give in and give his wife the limelight. We saw that with the John Travolta thing, with the Kevin Costner thing. He will literally be walked over in public in order to appease the flagrant indiscretions that Meghan puts out there in the public domain. When they get back home, according to ex-staff members, things can be very frosty indeed, going days without talking. Oh yes. Some suggest one of the most telling things that Meghan Markle did, and I say did, of course, was the fact that the Vanity Fair expose at the very start of this year. Remember that, chums? You see, that was really, really explosive because they'd done a lot of detailed work. And consequently, it's interesting, isn't it, when, of course, Harry was accused of having a fight with his uncle, Prince Andrew, he quickly set lawyers in motion. And it's very telling, isn't it, that there were no lawyers set in motion regarding the exclusive bombshells that Vanity Fair claimed that they had, and in particular, that divorce book. Now, again, where this gets interesting for me is that I have a very good associate at Vanity Fair, and they stand by this story 100%. More so, and this is the big thing that people haven't picked up on, is the fact that really, you know, this came from somebody so close inside the Montecito camp. This was fed direct from one to that party. You understand? They wanted that to get out there, particularly the divorce book. Now, according to the source, the reason why, really, when you think about it, if you cast your mind back to when Meghan sat down with Jamie Kern-Lima, if you remember, and I think the only real question, in my opinion, that Jamie got sort of interesting was when she said, "Do you see yourself being married forever?" And Meghan cottishly sat there, sans makeup but covered in bronzer, and said basically, well, of course. Her mouth said it, but her eyes didn't. Eyes, she looked down, and there was, now I'm no body language expert, but even I could see through the fact that she didn't like that question, but it was one that really Jamie wanted to get in. Jamie, in my opinion, is a hopeless romantic, and there's nothing wrong with that, but she likes the fairy tale, and amongst that squeaky voice, she decided, I'm going in for the killer thing, all about the fox and the handsome prince. You get all of that. So you see, the idea of the divorce book coming out was very interesting because, according to a source, this had been shopped around. Again, have to say allegedly. Now, who on earth, if you have somebody working with you, has you going around trying to shop a divorce book? I mean, it's just incredible when you think about it. But consequently, this is the problem now that Meghan has. You see, she's totally unrelatable to the average person who might want to buy into the brand, the product. You see, what people see is a ruthless manipulator who seemingly says one thing that then does another. You can't be this warm, fuzzy character who's trying to sell jam and wine and, she wants to make cakes so that the people know that she's thinking about them. Meanwhile, cutting off her entire own family. Meanwhile, cutting off her husband's family. We all know Harry's incredibly weak. I mean, that goes without saying. But consequently, she could have had one side of the family. And, it sounds awful saying this. Meghan is not very bright. I mean, most actresses, particularly when they're in the middling sort of stuff, are not bright because they just chase fame. They don't understand the business side of it. When you look at older stars, say like Betty Davis, they understood the nuts and bolts of the contract, Barbara Stanwyck really knew how to do a deal, particularly when she was in the Colbys with Aaron Spelling. Joan Collins, the same. They've been through, fame is a secondary. For Meghan, fame is everything. When we see her out and about, she's circulating, looking for the camera, wrestling the microphone. She doesn't really care. It's a little bit like a phrase that Lana Turner famously said way back. She wasn't too fussed about the dollar. She was more concerned about the billboard sign. Starring Lana Turner. That had to be in big letters. The money would come in. Meghan's exactly the same. She likes money, but likes the fame on a bigger level. And this is the thing with the divorce book. Now, as I say, the contact at Vanity Fair said there were far more things that came out from that provisional chat regarding exactly where Meghan was and how she felt and all of that sort of stuff. And it's very telling, you see, because Harry is very, very nervous about being left alone, in fact, petrified. That would be the better phrase. As I've told you before, Harry, in his mind, truly believed that his mother had just disappeared and she was going to come back and rescue him. And this is where he sees Meghan Markle, the rescuer. She's very clever. I'm looking after you, all of that sort of stuff. She's not. She's using his money to look after him. He could have had that for free. Now he's paying heavily with a massive mansion and, more importantly, all the staff that Meghan now wants to take on board, because even she can't be bothered to cook meals for the husband, but she'll dress them up by replating them. That's very nice, isn't it? You know what I mean? And there lies your problem. You see, each time that Harry feels very vulnerable, she clicks into gear with, I could go off. Yeah, I didn't want this life. I could have been something else. And he believes that because in his mind, he is this dragon slayer, this knight in shining armor. So when that story about the divorce book came out, Meghan, according to a source, was kind of delighted. Harry, wanted to get, shall we say, interested in the story, but apparently was talked out of it. It's interesting, isn't it, though? She didn't decide to talk him out of attacking his uncle, or defended his uncle, whichever way you want to look at it, with Prince Andrew. Yes, he denied it. And as I've said to you before, there's a bigger story behind that story. But of course, what I can tell you is that obviously, certain things Meghan would very much like Harry to take on board, particularly the things that are attacking his own family. But she didn't want this 100% regarding, of course, Vanity Fair. Some might suggest that she might think she's got a chance of getting back in with Vanity Fair. So consequently, why would you want to attack them? Well, Harry's family, it's irrelevant. She doesn't want them. Now, again, what's interesting about the way that this operates, and this is the bigger issue behind the scenes, is Meghan really, and I'm sure she has a lot of affection for her husband, but you know, he's now a liability because each time she tries to relaunch, there's a bigger problem. And the problem is he comes out or there's another connection and it blows her sort of carefully curated, crafted image through the walls. Now, that's in her mind. We know that nobody's bothered about that image. As I've said, it's blown, it's shot. Unless she now kissed and made up on the world stage with her father, of which nobody now would believe either, well, where does she go from here? Interestingly though, on the week that she decided to renegotiate the Netflix, well then this happened. Well, a celebrity, what's fascinating, you know, is when somebody gets the bullet, fired, axed, whatever you want to call it, depending on how big a star you are, the company will let you sort of craft your own exit, as it were. You see this a lot, you know, with soap stars, particularly those that have been there a long time. And they'll say, you know, it's time to move on. It's, you know, I want to open the door for you, younger, fresher people. Basically, it's saving face, you know, so that ultimately you've been given the bullet and you're too expensive and they want rid of you. But if they let you say that, then you leave on a better term. Perhaps somebody might employ you, give you a pantomime, vaudeville, touring play, that sort of stuff. If you come out fighting and say it's ridiculous, then, you know, I was axed, there lies your problem. And this is what's happened, of course, with Meghan Markle. You see, on the week that she got dumped from her mega lucrative Netflix deal, and she can dress it up any which way that she wants, they decided enough was enough. You know, they've had enough, basically. And so, yeah, they're going to run out the other piece of the series, and then there's this frightening sort of Christmas special and some sort of short film, right? Now, what people don't realise is this was only signed by Meghan Markle, and this was through her agency, right? So Harry's not signed to the agency, you'll understand. He's no interest in the entertainment world at all. You know, I think he figured that that would take off and he could be some sort of like stay-at-home house husband, you know, looking after his children. So that would have worked, if you like. But it hasn't, you know, they wanted him. And the thing is, I mean, it's just proven. The only thing that's sold is Harry and Meghan, right? The rest of the dross, you know, the business show and the Invictus stuff and Polo, that, you know, it just didn't work. But all along the line, Meghan assured them that by the time she came up with this cooking idea, cooking show, whatever, with Love Meghan, that was going to, you know, be big. So what happened was that behind the scenes at Netflix, they just basically say, yeah, you can put out your own PR piece. And if you'll notice, the head of content, some woman, basically has also said, oh, you know, they're a force and all this, and we're going to continue doing with the brand. Now, you know, we could get a roulette wheel out here, chums, and say exactly at what point in 2026 will Netflix suddenly, slowly step away. You see, where it gets interesting is they've already secured a real royal, and this is where the interest factor fell through the floor for Harry and Meghan. They're working, of course, with King Charles, his production team, and of course Idris Elba. So that's a bit of an impactive thing. They'll put a lot of money behind that, and they're certainly going to put more money behind that than the dross that Meghan's come up with. It's as simple as that. This is going to be awful, in fact, for Meghan in many respects, because should the King's documentary, which I think actually will do quite well, I think once that takes off, because they'll put, you know, better, you know, marketing behind it. Idris Elba will be sent out to do marketing. He's a good-looking chap, so that will help. Unlike Meghan, who sits behind that gated environment, like Greta Garbo, waiting, of course, for the spotlight. Well, you need to push, and this is the problem where they got sick to the back teeth of Meghan Markle. She won't promote her own stuff. I know people that are working inside that particular company, and they're thrilled that this is now coming to an end, because unlike everybody else that they work with, they're quite happy to go out and do magazine interviews and promote. Everybody has to reason and grind down Meghan to do the simplest of things. It's all her own fault. You know, you can't have sympathy for somebody like that. Of course, Harry might have been a little bit more adaptable, and I might have thought he could have done something like that. But she controls the entire narrative, and she cannot be seen to be the secondary in this Netflix deal. Hence the reason he just popped up on that little bit. bit, in the first series. Now, as we know, they're claiming there's going to be this Christmas special. That all hinges on whether she can get some decent guests, and that is a radically chopped down budget. There's not going to be a crew of 80 people for that one, let me tell you. And the idea truly is that Meghan comes up with some people that you would want to, serve at Christmas, the holiday festive season. One already that's been pivoted to pop into the show and perhaps give a number or two, no doubt as Meghan slopping out jam in the background, is Michael Bublé. You remember, of course, he was a bit of a significant moment for the Invictus Games. And what's interesting here is Michael Bublé, very talented guy, lovely singer, spoofing, of course, all those wonderful 1940s, 50s crooners. But let's not forget, he needs money. A couple of years back, he was more than happy to star in a Christmas ad for the failing supermarket chain Asda. So I'm not suggesting anything negative, but they will do anything for money. Now, he probably thinks this is going to be good. He's got a tour coming up. He's got an album. So consequently, that might just work if Netflix offer a little bit of money. Other than that, the problem that you've got now is that Meghan's literally beavering away behind the scenes and really trying to find out where she can go next, whether that might be Paramount Plus. But they'll all be looking at this new series and thinking, well, is it worth the effort? You see, the problem that Netflix really wanted was not necessarily this scurrilous gossip that came out of the first sort of, 6-7 episodes or whatever that was. But really, could they come up with a plot? Could they be travelists? Could they go around the world with adventures? But nothing they threw at them ever really stuck. They just essentially didn't want to do any work. They thought they could take the money and put out anything and people would watch it. Now, the problem that you've got if you are Prince Harry, and this is the bigger problem, the more that things fail, the more, according to that source, Meghan Markle truly blames the situation she's in. She sees herself as a rising star who gave everything up. I mean, make no mistake about it, she believed that when she entered the British monarchy, that she was giving up like this stellar career. I don't know, somebody along the lines of like Barbara Streisand with her Oscars or something, This is the way that it was sold. So when they met these people that Meghan couldn't get on with because they weren't kowtowing, these sort of courtiers and the staff and the people assigned, she had to be told, reminded the staff, that she was a person of power, yet they didn't really see her like that. And now here's the problem. You see, the one person that's standing in her way is Prince Harry, because what he brought hasn't delivered. Now, it can't be her fault. No. I mean, Harry's tried his best, actually. I have a little bit of sympathy for him because he's thrown everything and given everything up for this woman. But it's never going to be enough. Now, people who know Meghan can already sense the situation of what happened with the previous marriage and the previous relationships. Cut off, struck dead, move on. This one's going to be a little bit harder because Harry is a very dependent person. And, not that Meghan would care, but consequently, if Harry suddenly went into a very rapid decline, even if they separated at this point, it's going to be hard because nobody's going to love Meghan at that point. They barely like her now. So this is the situation you've got. Now, some might say, of course, they could end up living sort of separate lives. And as ever, I have to say all of this is allegedly. But truly, behind the scenes, Harry is trying his very best to make this relationship work. The problem that you have is that Meghan's interests have already gone, and they've gone off charity, and they've certainly gone off any reconciliation. She's no desire to come back to the United Kingdom other than the cameras. And Harry is still very much, I would say, more or less in love as he was originally. He's in it, possibly, some might suggest, for the right reasons. Meghan loved fame, and what she's finding is that fame costs, as that famous TV show said, and it comes at a price. And the price really has not delivered. And Harry, or her, still has to keep raking in the money. But as they found out this week, even that begins to dry up. And Meghan, some suggest, is looking around and casting her net to see perhaps where that next lucrative offer, whatever that might be, may be. You understand? As ever, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of By Royal Appointment. And if you can, chums, and I often say this, but please like, share and comment respectfully. As ever, it's always lovely to get your comments, and as I often say, do take care of yourselves also. It's a strange world out there. Until our next royal appointment, I'll see you soon.